meeting, and we live stream this on YouTube and also record it, and we are now live streaming for benefit of anybody who couldn't reach this. I think we are last. 30 seconds. Test 1, 2. Oh, there we go.
Wow,
that's a lot more lag than I expected, but okay, we are online. So welcome everybody. In a moment we'll do the public comment period. Our co-chair, Arkady, told me that he couldn't make it, so I'm going to be flying this solo. If I forget any part of the agenda, please make sure that we go back to it. I do have it in front of me. Let's go around the room and just do introductions. Stefan Wunsch, co-chair of the ROC.
Chris, I'm a member of the ROC.
Sandy Johnston, representing the Central Transportation Planning staff.
Hunter Diggins, ROC member.
Amy Locke, ROC member.
Brad Johnson, ROC member.
Karen Wexig, ROC member.
Excellent, thank you everybody. Let's dive right into the public comment period. Somebody already identified themselves as wanting to speak, so please, I mean, you don't have to go anywhere in particular, but you know, stand up, please identify yourself and welcome.
Hi everybody, my name is Charlene McLean. I am a member of Chelsea Green Routes. I'm chair of the Chelsea Cultural Council, and I am a 17-year resident of Chelsea and have been an MBTA rider for the past 29 years. I was very, very surprised to only recently learn of this group's existence. But I am encouraged by your mission statement that it will provide recommendations to the MBTA that communicate the needs and concerns of all riders. And I'm here tonight to share with you just a couple of concerns I have about public transportation access in Chelsea. Firstly, while the introduction of the Silver Line in Chelsea is a very welcome addition to the means of public transportation access, I am concerned that it was developed at the expense of the existing bus lines, the 111, the 112, the 114, 116, and 117, that serve a larger segment of the community than the SL3 will, including residents of Revere and Everett. The level of service on these lines has deteriorated in the 17 years I've been in Chelsea. And I am not a driver, I don't have a license, so my access is on these bus lines. So my question on this point is, will you recommend to the MBTA that they step up hiring of bus drivers so we can stop all the dropped trips that are slowing rides down? And will you also recommend to the MBTA that they staff only experienced supervisors at Haymarket Station, including more than one at a time during rush hour, to prevent the chaos that ensues regularly on the 111 boarding platform? Secondly, I am very concerned about the perfect storm of MassDOT construction projects on the Tobin Bridge, the Chelsea Viaduct, the North Washington Street Bridge, and now the Alfred Street Bridge in Everett. All of these are going to have an effect on a very bus-dependent community that's already dealing with unpredictable and deteriorating levels of bus service, and for whom walking or riding a bicycle is not a viable option. I'm concerned that the residents of Chelsea have, for decades, shouldered burdens in the name of the public good without due consideration being given to the impacts on our health, our well-being, livelihood, or sufficient mitigation to address those impacts. Will you recommend to the MBTA that they offer fair mitigation to all residents of Chelsea for the duration of the Tobin Bridge rehab, Chelsea Viaduct, and North Washington Street Bridge projects? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll answer very quickly. The way the Ride Oversight Committee operates is we take input from the public and from the members of the committee into our two subcommittees. We have one that focuses on capital improvement and financial issues, and one that is operations, marketing, and communications. This sounds like an operations perhaps as well as a finance and capital issue, so we'll discuss it amongst the different co-chairs. We'll take it into discussion in the subcommittees, and the subcommittees will do research. They might reach out to you for more information, and then the subcommittees craft recommendation language that then comes to the full committee and we vote on that. So although we can't say, yes, we will, or no, we won't at this time, we will definitely take everything that you've just raised into subcommittee and analyze it and research it, and thank you. Since you put a lot of effort, obviously, into what you just read, can you email it to us? Or get us a hard copy, whatever's easier for you.
I would also recommend, do you know about the Better Bus meetings?
With who? I
Oh,
think
you
there's
don't
one
know
tomorrow
about them.
night.
There's a Better Bus project going on in the T. And I know I'm pretty sure there's a meeting in Chelsea. I'm going to the one in Jamaica Plain.
There's nothing in
No,
Chelsea.
there's no
It's not, actually, you should make a point
There's
to
a
try to
Haymarket,
get,
a Haymarket street team I know.
It'd be nice if they reached out to Chelsea. I mean,
Well,
that's
they-
part of our issue.
yeah,
is-
but I'm gonna raise some of the same issues you raised because we have problems in JP. They don't have enough drivers. It's not quite the fault of the T, but maybe they need to do better recruiting. Maybe they need to stand on corners and grab young people and say, would you like whatever. Anyway, I think my feeling is this Better Bus project meetings are a little more grandiose, but I think we should hit them with the service now needs to be improved with the resources you have now, with the inspectors you have now. If you don't have enough inspectors, hire more. Don't plan bus lanes and all this wonderful stuff if you can't run it the way it is on the ground now. Anyway,
Please, listen.
Could I jump in too?
Of course.
Because this is touching on some like really big important things, and I don't know if you traditionally respond in the public comment period. I haven't been
I think
too many
with-
engaged, but like there's some big
Yeah,
stuff in here
please.
that we should definitely be talking about, and this isn't actually what I was here to talk about, but I
Yeah.
heard some
Did
things.
we skip you in the introductions?
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
By the way, hi everyone, I'm Melissa Blake, Senior Director of Service Planning, and actually, I can't even remember, like, with the MBTA, so probably about 5 or 10 years ago, we actually administered the RUC. So some of the old timers, I know from way back, but we passed the torch to a different department at the MBTA to administer, so I don't know all the newer folks. But I work in service planning, so we're looking at things like where the bus routes go, and we're doing the Better Bus project, and we're looking at ridership and how frequently the buses come, and all sorts of short-range operating changes. Gosh, what are we going to do with North Washington Street and Hoboken and Chelsea Viaduct and all those construction projects that you were rattling off earlier? So this is definitely something that we're looking at. And then also we worked very closely with bus operations as part of the FY19 budget process this year, because that's something that we've been observing. You know, we say here's the schedule that we're going to provide, but in many cases, especially on some of our key bus routes, like the 111 or the 77, which are the only key bus routes in their garages, sometimes one of like our dirty secret is that sometimes you steal from those routes if the once-an-hour bus, someone calls in sick. And that's something that's really problematic when 40% of our ridership is on those key bus routes, and having a degraded service level there can impact really a lot of people. So as part of the FY19 budget process, we said, hey guys, we need more resources just to run the service we say we're going to run, not even talking about expansions or anything like that, but just to not drop service. So they actually came through and said, okay, we're providing 55 new operators over the course of FY19, and it's not all going to happen on day one, but for us, that's huge, because typically we've been level funded for nearly every year. We've been putting in these requests, kind of an annual exercise, and often they get discarded. They say, no, level funded, same as last year. But this year, which is just amazing, and we're super excited, and this is really something that we're very excited about. We're getting 55 new operators. Of that, about, I think, something like, don't quote me on the exact number, but something like 35 are going into just reliability on the existing routes. So some of those operators are going to go to Charlestown, which means that that's going to help with the drop trip rate on the 111. Some are going to go to some of the other garages, Cabot, which is where a lot of the Roxbury and Dorchester routes go, and then some are going to other kind of sprinkled around the system just to help with the drop trip. So we're looking forward to that. It's not going to all happen on day one, so it's kind of some portion of that because it just takes time to hire. So some of that is going to be there for the fall ratings. A little bit more is going to be there for the winter rating, and a little bit more is going to be there for the spring rating, and a little bit more time for the summer, so that we'll get that 35-ish number over the course of FY19 because of the hiring process that it takes to just hire new people and get them trained, and not just hire new people, but keep up with the attrition that we already have on an ongoing basis, because we're always going to have retirements and kind of replacing the existing drivers. So growing the size of that while dealing with attrition is something that we need to make sure that our HR and our training school folks can accommodate. But so that's going to help on the drop trips. Second, on top of that, one thing that we found on the Route 111 in particular is that the travel times are just taking much longer than they are scheduled to take. And when you have that disconnect between what the schedule says and what's actually out there, it means that, you know, if it was supposed to be, I'm making up a number, but say, you know, if it's supposed to be 30 minutes and it took 40 minutes, that means that the driver's next trip might be late. Or, you know, if this accumulates over the course of the day, they might drop one just because, you know, the operator was out there for 4 hours and he was supposed to do 6 trips, but could only fit in 5, and then it was time to go do the next thing. So we're looking at making some major changes to the schedule for the fall rating. We're finalizing and fine-tuning what that might look like, but we're looking at adding, so of the 55, I had mentioned that about 35 we're going toward drop trips and just kind of running what we say we're going to run. About 15 or 20 are going toward schedule adjustments, whether that's because something is crowded or because something is unreliable. But the 111 is something that we really want to focus on for the fall rating. So we think about 5 operators. We're still figuring out the details to just give the buses enough time so that we, instead of what we sometimes have to do with congestion getting worse, sometimes we have to reduce frequency just to pay for the increased travel time. So with the infusion of 5 more operators from the FY19 budget process, we'll be able to keep the existing frequencies and actually give enough time so that it's not starting the next thing late and the next thing late and then dropping trips because of traffic. So that should help, one, with reliability, but also truth in advertising. But even bigger than the truth in advertising, you know, because people can be really frustrated if you say, hey, it was supposed to take me 40 or 30 minutes, but it actually took me 40. But what we really find is that the most frustrating part is that the bus was supposed to be here 20 minutes ago and there's been a 20-minute gap. So this should help with some of that just variability and the bus not being there when it was supposed to show up, and the long gaps in service that people experience. So we're super excited about that infusion of resources. The one thing that I couldn't do that I'd love to do is during the peak of the peak, like at rush hour, we have the number of buses that we have on the road. And we don't have more buses at the garage because we would need more garages and more buses. So just at the peak of the peak, we'll have to probably stretch the headways just a little bit. So say it's ballpark, you know, on each branch they have the short 111s and the longer 111s, and say each one is about every 10 minutes, and then combine the 2 of them together are supposed to be every 5 minutes-ish, somewhere in that ballpark. So it might be that, well, maybe now each one comes every 12 minutes, and combined they come every 6 minutes. Something in that ballpark. So possibly a little bit less frequent, but if it's more reliable and less likely to have long gaps that aren't scheduled, if we can actually run the schedule that we say we're going to run, that's what we're looking forward to doing. But during all the like weekends and nights, because the 111, it's busy at 11 o'clock at night, it's busy on Saturday, and it's busy, like, it's a lifeline. So people are using it not just to get to work at traditional commuting hours, but they're getting in early and they're going to school and they're going to their medical appointments, and it's serving a lot of different functions. So even if we're only able to add those 5 new operators during the off-peak periods, we still think that's gonna have a tremendous benefit for the ridership on the 111. So that's a quick sneak preview of things that are on the horizon in 111 land. I don't have as much to report on the 116, 117, and the others, but since you had brought that one up, I just wanted to respond and give people an update on that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Len, and then our other guest.
Oh, well, actually, I'm going to follow up on
Yeah,
the question.
I figured it was a follow-up, yeah.
Because
But
we
then
had a little bit of exchange, it's kind of out of protocol, but you're such a valuable commodity, with respect to your knowledge. When you talk about, extending the headways during the peak of the peak, I could imagine, that because you have so many people on the system then, that could affect crowding in a way that might exacerbate bunching. Because you have so many people coming into the system then, that if you stretch the headways, you're now going to be putting a lot more people onto a given bus, which will then cause, bunching. So I mean, two things. Do you have the ability to model that kind of interaction with people? And secondly, even if you haven't, have you considered maybe, what's the word for it, when you send out more than one bus at a time? So you intentionally send out two at a time, because that way I think if you prevent the bunching, and also if you did two, you might extend the headways, but then you're sending two out, so that could mitigate, the potential bunching, because as you know, once the buses bunch up, it's almost impossible to unbunch them, so that's all.
Yeah, and actually one of the other things that we want to do is sometimes we will intentionally play with the coordination. So I mentioned that we have the short 111s and the long 111s. So at Haymarket, say you have a large crowd of people waiting, and maybe 2/3 of them want to go to Cary Square or Bellingham Square or somewhere kind of in the southern part of the room, and then maybe a third or a half are trying to go kind of beyond Cary Square, so they need the long ones. One of the things that we're looking at is, can we play with how those interact and try to make sure that maybe instead of staggering them exactly evenly, we can have the short one kind of come first. So maybe say they're both scheduled to come each one is every 12 minutes. Maybe we'd have a 7-minute gap before the short one and then a 5-minute gap before the long one, so that you can kind of statistically, for people just showing up at random, be more likely to kind of clean out the people who are going, who can take either branch, whichever comes first, to Cary Square or Bellingham Square. And that way, for the long buses, they would have only a 5-minute gap, so that you would have the people who really need to be on that bus in particular have a better chance of getting onto the bus and not being, crowded out because, maybe someone who was only traveling to Bellingham Square was on that bus. So that's one of the kind of refinements that we want to look at and monitor. But right now, the run times are just so out of whack that we don't have a lot of confidence that those kind of scheduling, kind of fine-grained tricks are working, because the big picture is just so out of whack. So this is certainly the first start in what we think of as an iterative process. We want to fix the run times, and then monitor and see what the crowds are, and then if we have to make other recommendations to make other reallocations of buses from elsewhere in the garage during the peak of the peak, or whatever that case might be. Also complicating this is that the North Washington Street Bridge is going to be under construction, and the Tobin and the Chelsea Street Viaduct. So there's going to be some changes that we need to take a look at. But we want to monitor, and then also, this is getting into my second part of my presentation with the SL3. Are we seeing any diversion of riders? It's too early for us to say yet, but certainly the long-term, the 2030 model projected 2,000 people would divert from the Route 111 to the SL3. That's 2030 numbers. So obviously people aren't going to change their jobs tomorrow if they've taken a certain job because it was convenient to get to with the existing transit network. Those types of life changes aren't things that people change overnight. So it'll take some time to divert, but we'll be monitoring what is the ridership on the 111 and what is the ridership on the SL3, and is the headway that we're providing sufficient moving forward? That's something that we're going to continue to look at.
Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, hi, my name is Maria Belen, and I'm the Associate Executive Director of Green Routes, and I'm here to echo what Charlene said and really let you all know a lot of the frustration that is being felt in the community in Chelsea. We have a letter that we're going to deliver to the Secretary with many, many signatures. We're basically requesting a meeting with her. It's been over 6 months that we have been talking about all of these projects. And at the height of construction, it's gonna increase the trip by 45 minutes. I mean, that was in a letter to us from the general manager. And so in a low-income community of color, that it already takes 45 minutes to get from, or technically it takes 25 or something, but really in reality it takes a lot longer. For them to say, or for the agency to say it's going to be an increase in 45 minutes, that's huge to a low-income community that's going to have to pay childcare before and after. So I think if there's anything that Charlene and I and the community in Chelsea can let you all know and really ask for your support is to ask for a meeting with the secretary. We've had COO Jessica Casey at Green Roots meeting with us. We have come here to the DOT to meet with her. We have had several attempts to meet with the secretary. And what we're really asking for is fair mitigation. And so we know that's not the politically right thing to do. If you do it for one community, you're going to have to do it for everybody else. But the reality is that the COO herself mentioned this is unprecedented for 3 DOT projects to be happening at the same time. That's going to impact the 111, which is already overcrowded and already suffers from some of the highest numbers of drop trips. And so it does feel, and we've said this over and over again, it does feel like an attack on our civil rights. When a low-income community of color, primarily immigrant, is bearing the burden for one of the busiest lines in the entire system. And so I just want to, if there's anything that this is the first time we come to this meeting, we didn't know about this committee, and we're here to let you know that there's a lot of concerns in Chelsea. And that if there's anything that we can ask for you is to help us to meet with the secretary. I think we know that if the secretary meets with us, we're going to find common ground. We don't want to stop these projects. We don't want to do anything to prevent them from going forward. We also want safe infrastructure. But the people need justice, and they've been paying into a system. They've been paying the same price into a system that is not treating them the same way. So just if there's a request, one thing that we can give you and take away is our request to meet with the secretary. And I'll follow up, send an email maybe so you have my email address, but Charlene too, you can reach to any of us. That'd be great, thank you.
Charlene gave us her email address on here, but
you can reach out to her and we'll connect.
If you can also, in addition, write to us,
sure.
ROC
Yep.
at mbtaroc.org. And it's on the website as well.
Yeah, just two quick things. The Silver Line, we want to celebrate any expansion of public transit in Chelsea. It's more expensive, and in a community where 24% of the population lives below the poverty line, it's very hard for somebody to pay that extra money to take the Silver Line. And we were in conversations with the COO of the MBTA about being part of or talking about the Better Bus project. And the past few weeks, we haven't heard anything. Crickets. We've reached out. And now there's no meeting happening in Chelsea. So we feel that it doesn't seem fair that we're really going everywhere. We're taking all the steps that we think we need to take, and we're not feeling that love back from the MBTA. So if there's a request, I'll send you an email. Yeah. But if there's one thing that you can take away is just our request to meet with the secretary.
Thank you, Ms. Bud, as well. So I am here as a representative of the Central Transportation Planning Staff. We're also an agency in this building, and we're the staff to an entity called the Boston Region Metropolitan Planning Organization, which does transportation planning at the regional level. The MPO holds meetings actually in this room bi-weekly on Thursday mornings. They're open to every other Thursday morning. They're open to the public. I don't know if you're familiar with the MPO at all, but it is an open forum for people to come and advocate for their needs.
Okay.
So here, take my business card. Yes, and this is, if you want to come to this forum, it involves municipal representatives. There's a representative from the MTA, several from MassDOT, City of Boston, and there's opportunity for public comment to make your voice heard.
Great, thank you.
And a note about the Better Bus project. I'm looking at the schedule. There's nothing exactly what I would call close to Chelsea, but I'm going to be attending the one on June 6th in Lynn, and then right after that, June 7th is one in Sullivan Square. Chelsea's sort of in the middle between Sullivan and Lynn. I don't know if that means that
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna keep making the request to have a meeting in Chelsea. We've been doing this work for decades, and we're,
Gotcha.
the DOT and the MBTA need to come to us.
Gotcha.
So we're not gonna mobilize people to go to Sullivan Square. But I appreciate the effort, and I will let people know, but I think we're gonna keep trying our attempt to have folks come to our community.
Absolutely.
There's also a Better Bus Project meeting tomorrow in Dudley Square as well. It's the 23rd. That's at 5 p.m.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
remember that. So.
Anyone else want to speak during our full comment period? Mary or Lydia? Okay, no problem. Thank you again very much. Since we've already had introductions, including Melissa, let's move on to Melissa, our special guest. Last month we had Chris do an extraordinary job with his presentation on Silver Line. It's a great thing that we have Melissa here to follow up with, I'm thinking some of the sort of post-mortem on the first month of service, maybe a little bit, and what's going from here, but I don't want to put words in your mouth or set the stage, so please take it away.
So I'm starting with the kind of general background. I didn't realize that you just had a presentation on this. So this is actually the roadshow that Jess had taken to Chelsea. I'm learning how to get the back. And then I just have some talking points. And then we can do some questions.
Sure.
So
Do you have any hard stopping time?
well, I'm trying to get to a Lagoon Square meeting by 6, but I don't think it's that.
Lagoon Square in
That's more
Somerville?
just because I live near Lagoon Square. Chillax
In Somerville? By
Yeah.
6? You should be
We
going
have a
now.
station design working groups tonight, but that's my own personal.
Clearly
endeavor.
the MBTA.
This is what I do for fun too. Okay, so this is about the SL3 service that just started on April 21st. I tried to change our slides to be in the present tense and not in the future tense, because this was how we were trying to reach out to the community and just more drum up interest in the new service that was coming. So this is just a quick overview. So this is the newest Silver Line extension. It's just like the SL1 and SL2 in that it uses the transitway over in South Boston, connects to South Station. This is very similar to the SL1 in that it then serves, after it serves the South Boston stations, it goes via the Ted Williams Tunnel. Instead of circulating Logan Airport, it stops at Airport Station, and then the 4 new Chelsea stations. So we're very much looking forward to this. Primarily it's serving Chelsea and East Boston near Logan Airport. So even though it's called Airport Station, we don't actually see this as being something that people would use to get to the airport. It's really if you live in East Boston, just on the other side of Airport Station, you can actually walk through the station, get to the SL3 bus stop there at the airport, and then use that to connect to, say, the South Boston waterfront, if you have a job out there, or if you're connecting to South Station Financial District, or even to the Red Line, because that connection it takes what's a 3-seat ride via the blue line to either the orange or the green to the red, and now you can do, actually no, but if you're going to South Station, it's a 1-seat ride instead of being a 2 or 3-seat ride. So this is just saying, that it's trying to take what's a complicated connection and make it a little easier. So we have the Silver Line buses. Many of you are probably familiar with these. These are the same buses that we have tooling around on the SL1 and the SL2 previously. And now that we're using the 4 new stations. So yeah, for East Boston, it's great. You can get to the seaport and you can get to South Station. So here's a map. This is actually, you can see the 4 new stations in Chelsea. The one that's called Chelsea Station is right next to the Market Basket out on Everett Ave. And then the next station coming in is the Bellingham Square Station.
Your mouse is actually wrong.
This one is wrong.
Yeah, the Chelsea is actually closer to Everett.
It's closer to Everett
Yeah.
Ave. Yeah, sorry about that. The commuter station is gonna be a little bit farther down, but the T should be closer to Everett Ave. Good catch, sorry about that. And then we have Box District, kind of tucked behind, and then Eastern Ave, down here. That's the last stop before the Chelsea Street Bridge, where the drawbridge is. And this is an old railway, so it's a genuine, like, off-street busway. It has a couple of grade crossings, but it's an actual busway with some beautiful stations that are out there. And then just kind of some background, the existing commuter rail station is co-located near Bellingham Square, but that's actually getting relocated over to the Market Basket Station. So it's a little complicated right now. We have Chelsea Station, Silver Line, and it's not in the same place as Chelsea Station commuter rail, but we're working on it. Gonna fix that. But that's just an internal condition.
Quick question, it came up last month that the Bellingham Square ramp down from, is it Washington Street? Washington Avenue is still a few months or more away from being completed. Do you have any expectation of a big increase in ridership at Bellingham Square once that ramp is done? Or do you have sort of the expectation that anyone who's going to use it now is already using it, or somewhere in between?
I think we will get a bump, because it'll be more intuitive. Right now, it just feels like you can still get there from Washington Street, but you kind of have to like walk down and around and back, and it's longer than what that walk will be in the final condition when the ramp is there. So I think it should be just more direct, but more intuitive and more visible once that connection is in place.
Great, thank you.
That's just me guessing.
Well, considering your expert status, it's great.
So you can see here if you come in from those 4 stations, the next station on the other side of the Chelsea Street Bridge is Airport Station. So it's actually at the same level as like the Massport shuttle buses. They carved out a little space for the SL1 kind of at the rear, for the SL3 in both directions. And part of that was by necessity, because one of the SL3s, the one that's, it's actually, the 2 stops are located next to each other, so that for kind of wayfinding purposes, getting people to the SL3 stop from the blue line, we just want to say, everybody go to the SL3s, they're both located next to each other, but one of them has to take a very hard left in order to exit the station because if you go farther down into the busway, you kind of become committed to going down to the rental car terminal. Like, you're stuck. It's a long detour. So we very carefully selected the bus in its current position so that we could make just a quick in and out in order to get the outbound bus out to Chelsea. So that's one of the design considerations.
I think that may be the first we've heard of that, unless you mentioned it.
No, I probably didn't even pay attention.
That's excellent. I'm really glad you mentioned that.
And also one of the other things, when the station signage first went in at airport, it was really small. I don't know if you've been out there. So we're actually working on just physically making it larger so that you can see it from the blue line platform. Like as soon as you walk out of the airport station, you look down, and we wanted you to be able to actually see where it was, because it was just the font size and just the physical size of the font of the sign was smaller. So we're working on just helping with that legibility so that people can find it, because we really want it to be successful and attract people. So we want to make it very visible.
How long is it going to be until the real-time displays are going to be there? Because that's like a big thing for people. And I know, where's he left? Darn, I looked. It's when it's actually going to start working all together. Because that's like a really...
Well, some of it,
some of it I know they have to learn, and there's a reason for it, but...
The physical sign, that's a construction project, so I'd have to check with John McCormack on that one.
Okay.
I want to say it's like a year-ish, possibly better than that. But one of the other things that even just using your phone or the web apps, like there's a certain amount of learning that the buses have to do with just getting our systems tuned. And right now we have the schedule that we have, but literally it was constructed before the busway existed, so we didn't have running times for everything. So we're making some tweaks for the summer schedules to just put a little more cushion in there. And then actually using the run times that we've collected since it just started running last month, we're using those new run times to build the fall schedule. So there's a little bit of like, I'll call it fine tuning to try to introduce more real world conditions, and we can see what the impact of, you know, how variable are things because of the drawbridge or the lift bridge situation. You know, are there certain changes that we need to put in extra cushion? It's just different than the other Silverline services that we've operated previously. So those are some like minor behind the scenes tweaks that you should be seeing both around June 20 something. That's when we change our summer schedules. And then again, just after Labor Day, when we change to our fall schedules, you should be seeing some improvements in reliability because we're putting in more realistic run times based on the actual travel times that we've seen in live service. So we're definitely looking forward to that. But also getting the GPS tuned, like we adjust the geo fences and stuff like that, but we just need to have actual data to do that as opposed to, you know, getting some of that. So the predictions should be getting better.
Yeah, it kind of works. It's really strange. Like if a bus is within 1 minute of the station, it appears and it says it's arriving. And then it'll disappear and the bus will arrive and then it'll leave and then it'll appear for 2 minutes and then I found that if I just look at the map of where they are, that's about as accurate as I can get.
Yep. So some of that will get better in the summer, but some of it won't necessarily be until the fall when the schedules are better, because when the schedules are off, the predictions are bad.
Yeah.
There's just no way about that. So, yeah. Let's see, what else do I have? So, getting at the fair. So this is similar to the other Silverline waterfront stations. It is a subway fare, and the reason for that is that there's a cross-platform transfer into South Station, into the Red Line, because you're behind the gate at South Station. So that's the reason why it's treated as part of the rapid transit network, as opposed to something like Silverline Washington Street, where because you're outside of the turnstile, in that case, it's treated like a bus route. And then if you ever transferred from like Silverline 4 to Silverline 5 into the subway, you'd be paying just the step-up transfer. But because this one takes you directly into South Station, Red Line, and all the transfer opportunities that you have there, that's why this one's a subway fare.
Now I'm going to ask, because it's not on your slide, the transfer airport, because this has come up and I've watched drivers actually tell people that they cannot, they have to pay again. And from my understanding is with a Charlie card, they're supposed to get, it's supposed to be a transfer.
It's supposed to be a transfer.
I know the
And with
ticket
the
is-
ticket,
So I tweeted the MBTA after I saw this, and they, their response was it was card only, which I kind of like, I don't like that, because I think if you're paying a fare, you should get the transfer, whether it's a card or a ticket, but I know that's a limitation of the fare system. But I have seen this happen a couple of times where, and you try to correct the driver, and the driver's like, I don't know. And actually I felt bad for this poor woman because the official at the station told her that she could, and she's like, I don't have the money, and the driver gave her a different time. That's a good story. But yeah, so y'all
yeah, they actually had to program the AFC system to, because the stop at Airport Station, unlike other places where we have the free transfer, you know, it's outside of the paid line area. So it had to be kind of something that we programmed into the Scheibachmann Charlie system. But you should have that free transfer to the Blue Line or vice versa coming from pretty much anywhere in the subway network. You could start on a Red Line and then take a Green Line to a Blue Line and then have that free transfer onto the SL3 at that station.
If that's an issue that could be addressed by some better signage, even perhaps just some temporary sandwich boards at the station that says free transfer from X to Y, maybe we could discuss that in the subcommittee. That sounds like a marketing and, a communications and operations thing. Sounds solvable, in my opinion.
I just read that. Okay. So general service parameters, it's about every 10 minutes during rush hours, about every 12 to 15 minutes during midday and weekends. Right now the run times are a little wonky wonky, so this is gonna get better. A little bit better in the summer and then a little bit more better in the fall. And then the travel time is about a half hour, as long as the drop bridge is up. Got it down.
As you'll read in that,
Yeah.
you can do it as little as 23 minutes. If you hit every single light, and there's no wait, it's 23 minutes from Fox District to courthouse.
Since you mentioned that the GPS geofencing, aka the predictions, may be improved a little bit in the future, does that mean then that any dispatching that's done by looking at the route ladders or looking at that data would improve, or are they sort of disparate and distinct?
The map-based one, so this is actually similar to what you were mentioning about the app. Like if you look at the map, the data there is good. It's the predictions that are really sensitive to, you know, what the schedule is.
Yeah. I guess my real question is, are there any bus operations dispatching decisions made based on the predictions that might get better, and therefore would the bus operations dispatcher effect on where the bus is going? I guess I'm not really saying this very well, but can the bus operations say, hold for a little bit at this station, wait a minute or two, and would they be doing that off information that gets better?
I'm not sure if that's going to be one of the things that gets better.
Okay, that's fine.
Aside from, like, there were physically some of the new buses that came back from, you know, getting overhauled that literally their GPS wasn't working. So those things will get better when
I got it. So if the black and white is working, no
it's
problem.
not tuning the system, that's just fixing the GPS.
Got it. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And we're also, one thing, since we're on the topic of buses coming back, we're getting more buses back from Maine over the next.
Oh, I was under the impression that was.
So everything that's gone to Maine has gone, that's going to go to Maine has gone to Maine, and we're just getting the last couple buses back. So that's exciting for us because we've been doing this for quite some time. So finally having, you know, all 32 buses back on the property and running will be very exciting. So that'll help with some of these other service quality issues.
Bill Wolfgang might get some more sleep at night.
Is the 27 minutes, is that about what was expected, or are we, is it, I'm just curious where that is compared to when they designed it on paper.
It's a little bit longer than when they designed it on paper, but they did the original designs really a long time ago, and I think it's probably going to be a little bit more at certain times, just because really the Ted Williams Tunnel we've been seeing is getting worse and worse, even in the years since they did the modeling work for this. Just because the South Boston waterfront is a growing area and a lot of people are traveling in, so that's one area that we've been seeing the extra run times.
And yeah, there's no solve for that. I mean, the more buses we put through it's adding to the problem, right? It's helping the traffic. I'm not disagreeing with the idea of the concept, but there's no magic solve for the Ted Williams Tunnel.
No,
Yeah.
there is one.
Yeah.
I have one. I mean, you're not going to get rid of the traffic, but to allow, I'm sorry guys, to allow people to use the state police ramp really would save. The issue is getting the buses back into the busway, so they'll get stuck on Silverline Way waiting for that to go through and around and down into the tunnel. That adds about 10, 12 minutes while it's sitting there. If they could use the police ramp, it would eliminate 5 to 10 minutes.
I had connected those two issues.
Yeah, and that's really it. Now, in the morning coming back, the issue is the merge, and there's just nothing you can do about it. You have 4 lanes. You have 2 from 1A, and then 2 from the airport. Then it drops a lane, and it drops another lane to merge into 2 lanes, and Massachusetts drivers just don't know how to merge. Because the minute you get past the merge, the bus goes about 40 miles an hour through the rest of the tunnel. So, as I said, my times in the morning are about 27 minutes. It's great in the morning. The evening, it's abysmal because the buses can't come back. So, sorry.
Definitely, state police ramp is something that we're looking at. The visibility is a challenge because the merge section just isn't long enough. But you know, if our partners at DOT would be willing to talk about like striping changes, and also if the state police could talk about, you know, how they use the ramp, because sometimes they go up it backwards. It's designed for them to not just go down in the normal on-ramp configuration, but they use it in 2 directions, which is complicating. And then also there's a maintenance bay at the bottom of the ramp where they sometimes will like park a utility truck to do something in the shed. You can see it when you're driving by, that like sometimes there's a vehicle parked there. So if we can figure out some sort of way to work around those things, I'm not saying it's internet, like these are things that there are engineering solutions for. So if we can figure out how to make it work, that would definitely save a significant amount of time.
As a rock, how do we take that one forward? Because it just,
Yeah.
it's been a while since I've been on not doing SL3, taking the SL1 to the airport, but there's nothing worse than you're forgetting that you have to do the loop around with everybody else back, and you're like, the highway's right there, how do I get on the highway?
And especially like on a holiday weekend, it can be like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Because just when it degrades, it gets really bad.
Because this seems like a great one in our wheelhouse in terms of I don't think there's going to be anybody on this committee who disagrees with saying like there's an existing ramp, there's an existing ramp, this is the big
I think the only people that don't want us to
spend,
use it is the state police. I mean, I can't imagine anyone that doesn't want us to use the T to use this ramp, except the state police and maybe Mass Highway.
All right, so maybe I'll work with you on this one.
Okay.
We'll draft a letter, we'll bring it back to the committee in a month. Maybe we'll get through one of the subcommittees, and then we'll bring it back to this committee for a vote to send.
What's the rationale though? Why don't they want it?
Because from what I've heard is exactly what she said. They drive up the ramp the wrong way, and honestly, I don't buy that argument because the off ramp over, when you get off, it never has any traffic, and they're police. They just turn their lights on, and half the light changes, and the traffic goes through the lights. So I don't buy this excuse, except it's convenience for the state police. It's really a convenience for the state police because their barracks are at the top of the ramp.
Well, except with one exception, isn't the HOV lane that comes from 93 north, doesn't that enter before the ramp comes on?
Yeah, you'd also want to do something with the lanes that are coming in. So both the HOV lane and the ramp that the Silver Line's currently using, those merge really close together just before the ramp. So you might have to do something like force them into the main line or drop a lane on the main line to make those merge into a separate lane so that the bus can have its own acceleration lane. So, I mean, that's like striping and judgment calls and decisions about where you have your through lanes and stuff like that are much bigger than just the MBTA's.
In my case, that's why this was a hard one to move, is because you have there's no clear ownership of if it's the state police's ramp, they're not going to sit there voluntarily saying, please have my ramp. If the T has to wait for the DOT, I think we're all part of DOT, but if the T has to rely on DOT to do some lane striping, it's like the worst of, let's get multiple government groups in the room with no clear ownership. The one with the least amount of ownership is the one who's got the most benefit. So
It's
the
like
T has no ownership, but they're the ones who get the benefit.
It's the same thing with anything in the seaport. Look at the D Street light as a good example of that. Who owns the D Street light? Is it Massport? Is it MassDOT? I mean, it's Massport, but it's the city of Boston, but we own the light, we control the light, but the T wants to use the light now. There's too many moving parts and people don't talk to each other, and that's why the D Street light has been like that since the Silver Line opened 12 years ago.
We've been doing it.
Yeah, you did actually fix it a little bit.
We went to the half cycle, so things are.
That is better.
During off-peak periods.
All right.
I would love to.
But this all goes back to Silver Line's anyway, at the beginning of why couldn't they have kept the tunnel going for another 100 feet to go underneath that intersection as opposed to up that ramp?
Well, look, I'm fine with the letter, but I think you'll need to do a lot more. And so I'll suggest that you work it by finding like the key people who are making decisions or who can really influence things. I mean, that may take talking with people and work it that way. And because if you just put the letter out there, I mean, it's just easy for it to get.
We put it out with our hands away. No, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, you can do both, but really just be prepared to work it, and it may take a little while, but find the people, have conversations with them, and we can authorize you to talk, you plural, to talk on behalf of the ROC, so.
Okay, so we'll do that broader approach then, and let me, do you have a better role on this kind of thing? I mean, reach out to you just in terms of, once we get that part of it, but any thoughts on the topic?
Sure, I'll be able to help. I mean, it's not like I know, but I know who to ask, you know. so,
Not necessarily, you get personal context, but you
Sure.
just.
I'll also say when I hear, multiple agencies involved in talking, bring it to the NPO. It can't hurt. I can't promise that it'll help, but
Okay.
the NPO is a forum for getting people and entities to talk to each other. It's a public forum. Anybody can come and bring something up.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Bring it to public attention. Maybe some of the municipal reps will be interested.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Just trying to make a note of that.
yeah. I could take it to RTAC.
Mhm.
Yeah, all right, yeah. That's good, yeah.
It's a start.
Yeah, Mr. MPO, you're very helpful that way.
Okay, so just jumping back into the presentation, this is just a little bit about the schedule. One of the operating challenges of this route is that we have the Chelsea Street Bridge. It's a lift bridge. I think that it opens sort of on average, it might be something like 7 to 10 times, I don't know. And each time it's open, it's usually around like 15 to 20 minutes, depending on the size of the vessels. And we have a decision matrix tool that we've been trying to use to help understand, if we have information on, if it's just a tug, it's going to be a short disruption, the bus is holds in place, or if it's going to be a really big LNG tanker and it's going to be a long time, then maybe we're better off going up and around via Route 1. So there's sort of a decision matrix that our bus dispatchers use to help try to figure out what's the best thing to do, depending on when you get the call that there's going to be an opening. So that's something that they're doing. I always joke, this is one that you have so many welders, there's got to be like an engineering solution to stop opening this bridge quite so many times, but that's not something that we can do with Coast Guard regulations. Though we do have MassDOT folks who are reaching out to figure out are there operational changes that can be made to how those bridge openings are scheduled. We would love to come up with something like, could you get them to not be during rush hours, or could you get them maybe not have to open quite so high for the really short vessels. Some of these are just kind of blanket Coast Guard regulations, and they apply across the U.S. And it doesn't matter how tall your bridge, and it doesn't matter because there have been some accidents where vessels hit the bridge when it was partway open, and that was really catastrophic. But perhaps there could be a case made that there are changes to Coast Guard policy that we can talk about. So more senior folks at MassDOT are having those types of discussions to see, are there operational changes that we can come up with? But that, because of the nature of working with not just our usual, state government partners or municipal partners, also working with federal government partners, take our usual conversations and make them that much more complicated. So anyway, that's.
And the challenge there is that they have the ultimate trump card, right? That any question you ask, their response to be, why did you design a rapid transit system to go over a drawbridge? Could you do that for? Why did you design a rapid transit system to go over a drawbridge?
And my reply is, do you want your taxes to go up? Because the engineering to do that is insane. I think there was a discussion. A discussion online about it. It was like you have to start the tunnel at in the middle of the Laughlin bypass road, and would come up beyond Cottage Street because of the incline you'd have to do. So it's
No, you wouldn't have this service. It wouldn't exist. You wouldn't put a lot. You wouldn't. Yeah, this is the only way to do it. I get it.
I think, speaking for myself, it's the first time we've heard about the decision support matrix you mentioned about whether to go around or not based on whether it's a small vessel, large vessel. Is there going to be any analysis of how accurate the data going into that was? So, for example, if there was information that came from the shipping agency, Coast Guard, whatever, that said, oh yeah, it's going to be a small vessel, it'll be a short opening, but it turned out to be not a small vessel, not a short opening, is there going to be any feedback loop for analyzing the inputs into that?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, so we'd have to see what kind of data. I know the bridge itself has a Twitter account, and the bridge operator is tweeting out things like
that is not the bridge.
That's not the bridge.
No, I actually figured out who does it. So it's actually the security guards at the MassDOT garage, because they have a sandwich board that says, follow this garage on Twitter, and it's Logan to Chelsea.
Well, I guess we're spoiled, because we have the bridge operator just call our customer dispatch, or our bus dispatchers and that's how we're getting our information. I had assumed it was kind of.
I thought it was the bridge.
That would be so clever, they should totally do that. Anyway. But yeah, so the bridge operator actually calls up our bus dispatchers, and that's how we get our information. But maybe we can cross-reference it with this other data source and see if there's a way to get the automated data. I don't want to send out data collectors because that gets expensive. But if we can find a data source,
Yeah.
that would be an interesting.
If I can help, let me know. I'm a data walk.
Right.
Talk to your federal reps, it's largely a federal issue. The priority.
Yep.
I grew up in Connecticut, and along the shoreline,
Yeah.
the rail bridges there have a huge issue because boats have priority. Even if it's just like somebody's luxury yacht that's going in and out once or twice a year. So there's been some momentum toward fixing it, but the precedent is strong.
Okay, and this is more geared toward, we're doing some outreach in Chelsea, trying to like drum up interest. But I encourage all of you to give it a try. And then try again after June, and maybe try again after fall too.
Same time of day, same day of week. Yeah.
And then we're also trying to ensure that people, because we do have a number of railroad crossings, this is right next to the Newport-Rockport commuter rail line. So we want to make sure that people are aware that it's literally right behind the busway. So be mindful of your environment and be safe out there. And then what else?
Yeah, you know what I saw someone doing the other day was near Eastern Ave Station, the Jersey barriers, they were walking on them. On them. And I'm like, this kid is gonna fall. It was like 3 kids.
Well,
Yeah.
we did talk last month, when the question came up about what remaining safety and traffic control hardware has yet to be put in place. And I think we asked the question amongst ourselves last month of, will there be any improvement to schedule adherence, any shorter trip times when the last of the planned hardware is put in place? Do you have any sense of?
Yeah, certainly that's
improvements?
another one. So there are a number of elements that aren't there yet. I touched on some of the other ones like the board at Airport Station or moving the commuter rail station. But one of the other kind of big ticket items is the signal crossings. So especially right next to the market basket, that's a really busy corridor. The intention is to have grade crossing rates just like Newport-Rockport line. When it comes through, the grades come down, the lights go on. That there's going to be some type of signal system, maybe not exactly the same, but a similar type of like actual signal to stop vehicles so that the bus can get through there. And I'm not sure if there are any other intersections. That's the big one that I'm aware of.
So yeah, there is. So the plan calls for Edward Ave, Spruce, and Arlington and 5th. Cottage Street, I don't know if they wrote, last time I talked to John McCormick, I think they had taken some phase 2 items and moved them to phase 1, but the signals can't be installed due to the train issue. But I think Cottage Street eventually will have a signal there. I was under the impression it was going to be signals. I didn't hear it was actually going to be gates.
Well, not necessarily gates, some sort of signal system.
Yeah, there's going to be like, the poles are there. It's, according to the person I spoke with, the poles are there, the wiring is actually there. It's just, they can't do anything until the trains, all the signals for the trains get moved and the commuter rail station gets moved, so. But my suggestion actually I put in here was to actually put gantries or gates actually, because a coworker she is her daughter goes to Chelsea High School and she has to walk across that intersection, and they're concerned about kids walking across in front of the buses, even with the cop there. And the suggestion is maybe with some sort of gates or gantries put down that it would actually stop people from trying to cross the intersection. This actually was a big conversation. Actually, it was Alex's Christmas, by the way.
It was?
Yeah, it was Alex.
Okay.
She keeps asking about it. So, and that was a big deal because all the kids that do cross through there, yeah, and that also being a very busy intersection.
again, if there's no expectation of any schedule adjustments once they're in, we'll revisit this once they go in. I mean, I'm sure there will be an improvement.
That actually leads me to another question. So when I actually went through this presentation with the team at City Hall, they had told us about the intentions of the transit police directing traffic. They told us after 3 months that was going to be the end. Has the T figured out if they're going to keep transit police there during rush hour to direct the traffic at MBAD, and so on and so forth?
I know they had a big push when it was first there new, and I don't know if there are any places that have an ongoing commitment. That's something that I have to follow up with the others who are closer to that.
Yep.
Hi, how you doing?
It's expensive though. That's hurry up with the signals here.
Yeah.
Yeah, details are expensive.
Yeah, I was encouraged to see that the poles wiring, I agree. I mean, I go by the commuter rail, it seems like that part of there, putting on the signal heads and programming might be all that's left.
Yeah, but that, like, it's not a traditional intersection, it's not just traffic lights, because it has to tie into the existing commuter rail,
Right.
like that system too, so it's a more complicated engineering. That's why it's not just a traditional vanilla traffic.
I think Barry.
Is it quick?
Couldn't you just move the gates from the railroad crossing back to where the bus crossing is, since they're parallel?
I'll kind of say that I asked that. I think the MBTA doesn't really allow that. Is it, someone please correct me?
I mean, the
I thought
train
the-
gates work by detecting through track circuits on the tracks. I don't know if they can be programmed and set up to detect the bus as well.
But I will say this, that's a darn good question, and I will look into that, being a commuter rail guy. Very good question.
Yeah, having 2 sets of gates does seem somewhat silly, but I've seen it in other setups, similar setups around the country.
Anyway, that's it for my presentation.
That's excellent. Any final questions? We actually are only about 3 minutes off of schedule.
Melissa, sorry.
Yeah.
I was just gonna ask, I know we talked a little bit earlier about the runtime is, I guess, a little bit longer than you guys were expecting, but overall, what's your kind of feedback on the project? Does it meet your expectations? Is the ridership that you expected to see there, is it kind of doing everything you wanted it to do? And do you guys see this as a blueprint going forward for kind of future similar projects?
Yeah, well, certainly it's exciting to add to your network and get more connectivity. And I meant to bring my ridership notes. We've been seeing about 4,400 passengers per weekday. Now, the only projections that I've seen were 30-year out numbers. I haven't seen something farther in, because what the modelers did was they said, okay, here's looking at existing conditions, and they're modeling 2030 conditions. And kind of long term, it's supposed to get 8,800 riders or so per day. We're at 4,400 on pretty much month 1. So I'm excited, like, it's carrying people. Now, we're not gonna see all that shift overnight, because obviously, look, people haven't changed their jobs. Maybe now people have more flexibility to get employment on the Red Line or near the financial district or in the seaport. But those types of kind of lifestyle changes aren't things that happen overnight. So we'll see how those numbers change over time. And also, as we kind of refine the schedule, we expect to see improvements. As we get the signal system in, we expect to see travel time savings and some other improvements. So this is an iterative process, but we're excited to see the numbers that are there so far, and hopefully we'll keep seeing growth.
I had kind of a more general question, which is the question of dispatching came up a couple of times earlier, and I'm a regular rider on the 39, that's my daily ride. And I've noticed a number of times recently some bunching that occurs not just mid-route, but originates at the terminal, where multiple buses are being dispatched at once. I've seen this on other routes as well. I know other people have observed this problem, for example, on the 1. And it seems to me that the T is just understaffed in terms of supervisors and dispatchers. So I was wondering if there were any efforts underway to do something about that staff shortage, as there seems to be with drivers.
Yeah, we made some great progress on the driver's front. We haven't seen any movement on the dispatcher's front, but that's something that we really want to underscore as part of the Better Bus project. You know, we're doing a lot of analytics that are different than we've typically done in past. This is the new branding for the formerly known as the service plan. But rather than just saying, hey, we can change schedules and we can change routes, we want to say, well, how can you really make the routes we have better? How can we partner with municipalities to say, okay, we need a queue jump, or we need a bus lane here, or on our end, how can we say, we need better cover list management and extra board, and we need better line supervision so that we can handle the bunching type issues when that's really the cause of crowding, maybe not necessarily a schedule issue. Or so there's so many different things, some of which are in our control and some of the things which are beyond our control, but we really want to shine a light on all of those things and try to make the case to powers that be that we need more resources, or we need more dispatchers, but also work with our municipal partners to get them to help us on the things that are within their control.
On that same issue, apparently operating surplus is being diverted to capital programs. So there is an operating surplus. You can hire right now more inspectors. So what bus gives?
And definitely with some of that, they're changing how they hire to their operating. It used to be that they were told that they could only hire to a certain head count, but when you have long-term
What do you mean?
absences.
Oh, you mean because of pensions and all that kind of thing?
Well, just like the budget says that, okay, here's your budget for next year, you have whatever the number is, 1,000 drivers and X million dollars or whatever. But often they weren't hitting that budgeted number because if you were at a certain head count, but maybe there were a lot of people out on long-term absences or discipline or some other different things, they were never actually able to have as many people as they were budgeted for. So one of the changes in practice that we've already implemented is to say, hey guys, we can aim for our budget, which might mean that we have higher headcount than we're budgeted for, but because there's always going to be attrition and people who are retiring and people who are absent long-term for a number of different reasons that aren't getting paid, that we can say, as long as we meet our dollar amount, we can have maybe a higher headcount than we're budgeted for. And that can help us with some of these persistent issues that we've been having with reliability and drop trips and so many different things.
Can you also hire more part-timers, drivers? Or is that the union, is that a union issue?
I mean, we're always trying to work those numbers to make sure we have the right balance of full-timers and part-timers. And actually, one of the recent conversions we've been doing is actually part-timers are good because this might be way in the weeds, so I apologize in advance.
Go in the weeds.
But, like, you can cover the AM and the PM peak when many of our customers want to ride buses.
Right.
Because just the way that our contract is structured, they don't get paid spread pay for having like long days where they have to go. But then you have 6 hours of work in a day with a long hour, and that's just not a desirable piece of work that wants people to stay employed. So we've been trying to say, well, can we have more full-timers do that? So we created these 10-hour days that mean that people can work 4 days and have their full work week. That still cover both peaks, but then they have less of a break in the middle of the day. So we've been converting some of our part-timers to full-timers, and that's been pretty successful. We found that people, even though it's a long day, but people appreciate having that one extra day off and one less commute to deal with in a week. And it makes the long days a little more productive, I'll say, or more working time so that you don't feel, because the part-time days are just long.
That's actually why I tried to become a bus driver, and that's why I didn't become a bus driver, because the minute they said you had to work a split for 3 years, I was like, nope, and there's no way. Because I wasn't going to pay enough, and I'd have to get a part-time job, and how can you get a part-time when you,
But there may be people with a family responsibility,
Yeah.
children or elderly or illness, that part-time would be perfect. Maybe they can only work 25 hours a week or 20 hours a week. I don't know, just think creatively.
The 4-day, that's great. Yeah, Len.
So one thing I've been telling people about the whole issue with buses leaving bunch at the origin was that a lot of times the schedule just doesn't allow the dispatcher to make that driver either delay or usually delay, because if the driver's coming off schedule at a certain time, then they need to do that run then, because my understanding is that the decision whether to pass someone go overtime, is not something that's done lightly. It's not done simply because of bus punching. So is that an incorrect explanation for why you have multiple buses en route leaving?
Yeah, often it's because, similar to what I was saying about the 111, just needing more resources, what we see is congestion is worse now than it was 3 or 5 years ago, probably when we last did the schedules on lots of routes. So that if there's that cushion of time, the layover at the end of the line, when usually the bus can recover and get back on the schedule. But if the travel times are longer than scheduled, they're using up all that time and they're still departing late for the next thing. So pretty much as soon as they arrive, they're back out, or if the operator has to use the restroom or something, like that's the only opportunity. So sometimes it's an issue about having insufficient travel times baked into the schedule. And those can just cascade if things get out of control. So those are things that we're looking at. But we don't want to just focus on how can we change the schedule to make things take longer, because that's using more resources. So that's why it's so important as part of the Better Bus Project to say, well, where are the important places to make the bus go faster, and where are the places where a majority of people are in buses and using a road when you're comparing the total traffic volumes of how many people are in cars or on bikes or walking or in buses, so that we can be really strategic about where we're getting these bus lanes, so that they can be the most impactful and help identify true needs that we're identifying through our data sources.
Well, no, we'll put that way. It sounds sketchy when you say change the schedule or to match, what's going on.
Well, it's important, but I just don't want to only do that.
Yeah, because I feel that, because the bunching is it's almost mathematical, you know what I mean? And if you have a misalignment in your schedule, then you create the bunching, and once you got it, as I said before, it's really very difficult for it to resolve itself. And if you're not going to have dispatcher intervention for whatever reason, that bunching is just not going to unbunch itself. So if changing the schedule prevents the bunching in the first place, then have at it, because I think you do everyone a service that way. But you would know that, I'm sure you've done some modeling.
Especially, I don't know whether congestion is getting worse. The region has more employment, and also the damn Ubers. OMG. If people are just, a few bus riders switch to using Uber, but that creates more congestion on the roads and can make that experience of using the bus degenerate.
Yeah.
Sorry, this isn't what I'm here to talk about.
It's fine.
It's 6:18, so we should let you get out of here because you have another meeting to go to. Thank you very much for sticking with us even later than we originally booked you. I thought that discussion coming out of the public comment period was really valuable. Thank you again for not only participating in that discussion, but this. Thanks for staying late. It's always great to have you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Great.
The band's back
Yeah.
together.
Oh, we can take care of it. Yeah, just yank out the memory stick. It's yours. We'll take care of that. Thank you.
Just get Liz Moore. And try and get Liz Moore to join.
Yeah, really.
She's not refusing to enter this building?
Huh?
Liz isn't refusing to enter this
Well, I
building?
don't know. I told her I'd contact her a year after she retired. She didn't dismiss the idea right out of hand. So.
I think we're up to subcommittee reports, please. Anyone want to go first?
Sure.
50-50 shot.
I'll do CIF first. So we had Samantha Silverberg from Capital Investment. Yeah, I don't really know her title, but she spoke on the Capital Investment Plan, and it was very insightful. We did get an explanation about the they call it the lockbox, and I guess another term for it is I'm blanking out on it. But essentially there is a diversion from operations to capital, and the rationale for it is to reduce the amount of debt, because if the T doesn't have to take debt in order to do some of these capital projects, then that can help the budget overall in the long run. But then, of course, it is the issue with the complications caused, by not spending more on operations. They are working hard, and I think it's going to succeed because the governor seems to be on board with changing what was passed, I guess, 3 years ago, where they were going to take employees from capital and put them onto operations. Because the problem has been in the past, and this was happening not only on transit but also on highways, just that the employees were coming out of the capital budget. So then when you wanted to spend money on capital projects, you didn't have the money because it's going to be essentially employees, which people were considered more operations. So it didn't really matter what you were working on because you were an employee. The argument was that should be considered, operations. And now the thinking is that, well, if most of your work is devoted, to capital projects, so let's say you are a project manager for a capital project, that's all you really do is kind of manage capital projects, then perhaps your money, your income, the funding for you should come out of capital. And, it just, I understand it, but it is just shifting around, the chairs on the Titanic. The deal is that, the system needs more money. I understood to a certain extent why the Leo and others in the legislature were refusing to give the T money when they weren't spending, the capital budget. But I think they were confusing the capital side with the operations side, and it was a little frustrating in 2015 when we had the big snowstorm, because there seemed to be some momentum for the T getting more money, and it seemed like the momentum was going towards that going on the operations side, and then the Leo stepped in and said, no, the T has all this money that's not being spent, but that was all capital money that wasn't being spent, and Samantha said, well, they're doing a better job of spending the money now, and I pressed on why. And she says, well, it seems like we have more resources, and I pressed a little more, and it seems like that resource is the people that they needed to actually, do the due diligence is the right word, but do the necessary work to make sure the money, is spent the right way. Because my understanding beforehand was just that they just didn't have the resources to actually get the money out the door. And in any entity, but especially a public entity, you don't want to be caught spending the money the wrong way. If you don't do things correctly, and someone that you authorize to give a contract to doesn't do what they're supposed to do because you didn't do what you're supposed to do. This is all very circular, but the point is that I felt that they were hamstrung, and now it seems like they have the resources, to develop the capital projects correctly. So that's good. The other thing that was big, she felt, was that they were making projects like GLX, and South Coast Rail, projects unto themselves, as opposed to being split amongst several categories in the capital budget. It would be a project unto itself. You'd have a project manager, that was responsible for everything in that project. And so I think that's going to make things more efficient. And I suggested that they try to document in some way how that makes things better, because we've been around a while and we've seen these transformations from one system to another system, and then you get someone else comes in and they want to undo it or do it some different way. And if you don't make the case for why this way is better, at least than what you did before, then should someone, a new GM or whatever, a new head of capital or whatever, come in and say, well, I want to do it that way. Well, you don't have a case for not saying go back the other way. And I know it's hard to document these things and show, that they are better. Because some things just on their face, seem better, and this is one of those cases. But she said she'd take it under advisement. I think we'll write it in our letter. on the capital investment plan, which should be done by, we have to submit it by the first meeting. That'll be one thing that I included in it. So that was it. I mean, there was a question about, you know, South Coast Rail and why that's moving forward with the current configuration of types of trains. I mean, and there was no real answer to that.
As opposed to?
As opposed to, I guess, electric. I mean, and so, but right now, I guess they are deploying it in phases. I mean, so I guess they're going for the distal, I mean, Fall River and maybe a couple stations in between.
I think they're going to branch off one line. I think that's what it is. And then, as I said in the meeting, it was more about getting the service to Fall River and to New Bedford than it is to wait for them to do electrification, which would take a lot longer and vehicle. Gotta buy new vehicles. Let's just build the road, get it there. So.
Right. And politically, I mean, you've got to get out to Fall River.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you know, it's as political as GLX, if not more so. You know, and I get it. I mean, it's like they've been waiting for a long time. I mean, they feel like it will, you know, help their economies. I mean, we'll see. You know, go ahead.
Well, I'm not usually able to go to the capital finance subcommittee meeting, so pardon me for asking a question that I probably should ask there. But is there ever a sense of pushing a project forward because there's already been some groundwork laid or some capital expenditure for that project way in advance that they don't want to waste? And I'll tell you why I'm thinking of this. I went on it was an excursion trip. You could probably call it a fan trip, but it was a passenger trip from Middleborough to Fall River, the exact route that is going to be, it's projected to be the commuter rail service. There were several bridges that had been completely replaced along that route, and we were told.
We spent our vacation time in different places.
Yeah, exactly. But we were told,
Once the kid gets bigger, he's going to want to go. You can just ship him off with.
But we were told those bridges were replaced in anticipation of commuter rail service to Fall River. Do you guys, in the sense of capital projects, do you get any impression that there is sort of a behind the scenes, well, we've already put all these millions of dollars into these new bridges and all these other things, we should keep going with it? Or is that not what happens?
Well,
I'm a little pessimistic, which is not my nature, so if you want to just defer that, we'll talk afterwards.
No, I mean, it's just the projects are being scored, and you can see the scores, and I forget the categories, but that can factor into it, into giving it a higher score, and so, and it's a matter of like who is spending the money. If the state is primarily the one spending the money, you know, then that would be preparation for it. I mean, but yeah, and it's not done in a nefarious way. It would be more just that, well, of course you've done the preliminary work. Why wouldn't you follow through without some compelling reason not to?
Sure.
You know?
Well, what you just mentioned about the scoring system makes a ton of sense to me, and we can leave that topic right there. But to say that, yeah, we've already done these bridges, therefore the project is scored higher. That sounds quite legit to me. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of whether the bridge itself, you know, needed to be replaced on its own, you know, and so I mean, if it jumps the queue, I mean, then that could be an issue. I mean, like, let's say you have other bridges that need to be repaired, and they're doing this simply to grease the skids, then that could be an issue. But I'll tell you, from working with more and more people on different levels of transit and transportation, their motives seem quite pure, and the extent to which, you know, they look out, you know, for entities other than themselves, I mean, is pretty admirable. That isn't to say people don't make mistakes, you know, we do. I mean, and with all the information, the best information we have, we can still come to the less than better decision in hindsight. I mean, you make the best decision you can, but things change, and then you go, well, wish we had done things differently, but you didn't have the information about how things were going to change. And so there's only been one case when I've seen just flat out incompetence, and that person's now gone. So that's a.
Yeah, we went down deeper than that than I wanted to. Thanks for indulging me on that.
That's pretty much it. We're going to have Paul Regan hopefully for the June meeting to talk about the MBTA's advisory board's take on the operating budget.
That's great.
Yeah, he's always a lot of information from him. That's it for me.
Other subcommittee?
I guess that's me, right?
Yeah.
You were at it.
I was absent, yeah.
You were absent. It's just gonna be hard for you to do it. The folks who are also in the room can help me out here. So for the first hour, we had a special guest from Keolis.
Linda Dillon.
Linda Dillon. She runs the service center, right?
Oh, yes.
Yep. So she talked up her service center for well, it sounds like they have quite the operation there in the service center. And it sounds like it's it's superiorly resourced in comparison to what the MBTA has. Is that a fair point?
Totally fair, totally fair.
Yeah.
I don't know what the resources levels are, but in terms of, as we discussed, every department at the MBTA, we all have different levels of responding to complaints.
Yeah. So we talked about that. She did talk about fair is fair for a while. We did. They are. She had made. It did not sound like that was going away anytime soon. It sounds like if anything, they're doubling down on that, and that they see that as a really important piece of their work going forward. We talked about a little bit about weekend ridership and the vast, the significant drop that they see over the weekends, and I think you saw that announcement recently that they're going to try dropping fares.
It's a $10 weekend fare, as much as you want to ride, with the exception of the K-Flyer.
Yeah.
Did anybody catch, is it, I haven't had a chance to look, I'm sorry. Is it $10 for Saturday or $10 for Sunday, or is it $10 for both?
For both weekends.
No?
Oh, I also heard Cape Flyer is going to be $15 round trip on Sundays.
Oh.
So $10 all you can eat anywhere in the commuter rail system for 2 days.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know what you're doing this week.
You mean every weekend. Every weekend. So it's like, you're just going to be like, every node, you're just like.
Is there anything you haven't been to yet?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. I haven't been on like hardly anything south side.
Oh, man.
Seriously.
You're waiting for the $4 billion tunnel.
TF3 Airport, here we come.
Wickford Junction, you know it.
Actually, yeah.
I have been to Wickford Junction.
Every time I hear that name, I keep thinking of like a 70s TV show, Wickford Junction.
Yep.
I hear the bus from downtown Providence beats the train sometimes when there's no traffic.
Oh, no.
Just keep in mind that we're on YouTube.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We did talk about that, and we also talked about, we didn't get a lot of details about the thing, but we did briefly talk about changes in service, I wasn't, I can't remember now if that was related to just summer changes or more permanent changes to the schedule. Anybody remember?
The changes in service?
Yeah. Schedule changes.
Spring schedules did just come out.
Yeah, it was kind of a spring schedule.
This past Monday.
So after Keolis, we pivoted and spent most of our time talking about the Green Line. The Green Line proposals that literally come out that day or the day before. The Green Line proposal being that the idea to eventually get much longer cars. We were calling the Type 10s have now been rebranded as what John did tell us. They have a different acronym. They're not Type 10s.
D, I believe.
Oh, Type Concept D, was that it?
Yeah, I thought so.
It was something. Yeah, I think that was it. So we should don't dare call them a Type 10. They're Concept Ds. So Concept Ds are going from, what was it, 80-foot car to a 120-foot long?
I thought they were even longer than that. I thought that you could Google what's available in Toronto now.
Oh, yeah, those were, I sent those to you, so it was 99 feet.
I thought it was 99.
That's those, I don't know what the T proposed, but
The T was, it wasn't quite double, so I think it was going from 80 footers to 120 footers.
120, okay.
So the idea was
They
to
did that in upper
fit two
section.
of them into a 225-foot platform, as I understand it, so.
Yeah, that's what I didn't understand, because when I was looking up for yours, I was trying to figure out exactly what they meant by the 225 foot, and I couldn't figure
So
it out.
I imagine it's from the front door to the back door, so there will be a little bit of nose
So that,
space.
so that- that's.
And I could be wrong, don't quote me on the 120, it was, it's well, whether it was 115 or 120, well, I mean,
Oh, maybe we could get Huzi to come and talk about it.
it'd be interesting to get somebody to talk about it more. What's interesting about that though is don't expect these things tomorrow. It's not only that proposal was not only for just the new vehicles, but the number of changes you have to make to allow for those new vehicles. Those include changes to some curves in the system, and we went through. We kind of an interesting discussion. It wasn't necessarily the curves that you would think. The first one that came to my mind is the one at Boylston Street that you have to fix that curve. That one's apparently okay. Some of the curves in question tend to be at the end of the lines. So, for example, at Reservoir, at the end of the C line, kind of flipping around there, going back in the little yard there, or at the end of was it the B line in Boston College, there's some loop there.
It's Heath Street also.
And Heath Street as well. So there's some. It's those. Was it Heath Street in particular?
I thought Leechmere was one.
Leechmere's one.
Which is going away.
Yeah, we said that one's not a problem because Leechmere goes away. So it's, I thought you mentioned, we talked about the B and the C, and I thought Leechmere was, I thought.
Heath is definitely too short.
Was that?
Heath is definitely too short.
Heath, okay.
Yeah.
And
But there's also some, I think Boston College.
Yeah, I think Boston College.
I think in the yard, there's a loop that's too.
Yeah, but it's not linked, it's the radius of the turn.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the issue.
Wow.
So they'd have to fix some of those curves, is one. Then you
Well, I
also.
think at Heath Street, they have to have in-street, they wouldn't be able to, they'd have to make a different.
Yeah, it's a whole other animal.
They'll just cut it back to Brigham Circle, you know.
Oh.
I'm joking, I said that just to give you a rise out here. I couldn't resist.
There's some platform height issues, because if you did these, if you're gonna invest in this giant fleet, you want everything to be low floor. So we talked about that, and then what that led us to is the interesting question of just timing and rolling these out. Part of the problem that the T has had continuously is you don't fully replace the fleet. So when you don't replace the fleet, you have to make sure you can couple to the things before it, and the coupling height on the older Type 7s and Type 8s is at a different level. So the question would be is, could they, especially with the Type 9s coming soon, the Type 9s that you're gonna have to replace the Type 7s and Type 8s. That's not a so by the time this is all up and running, you may not have to worry about those. But you're just getting your Type 9s. What the heck happens to the Type 9s? Because they're at a different height. Would you have to be? Do you literally design this new train to configure to just 30 Type 9s? That seems like a bad trade-off. So there's we talked about some wild proposals out there, which include and I'm getting my obligatory reference to the Minuteman trolley line in here. Putting the Type 9s, using the Type 9s for now, and realizing eventually putting them down in Minuteman, or putting obviously there's other things that have to happen to make it there, make that happen. But other options for those Type 9s, I don't know, maybe making the Silver Line really, at least through waterfront, or putting them out there somewhere, using the Silver Line. There could be other spots to use these. If we have extra Green Line cars laying around,
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it's a good
Why
problem.
not just put the new cars on the certain lines and just have a bifurcated green line for a while?
I think that would be. There's a lot of project land management, and I think they would do that as they rolled out. I think that was part of the proposal as well. That if they ironed out some of the curves, they could keep different ones and different things for part of it, but.
I mean, politically, that's not good, but
Yep.
from an engineering point of view, it's probably
Yep.
better.
And then the last thing related to that, and I think that's be good for the update. We talked about the other challenge is the causeway that runs near Science Park. So from Science Park Station to Leachmere. I didn't realize that is one way. Both are it's.
You can only have two cars on it at one time. So
Yes.
you have it.
You can't have two cars passing each other on it. There's restrictions on it.
Really?
Currently.
Yeah. I never noticed
And that was news to me as well. So we're gonna spend $1 billion to make the Green Line extension, but we're gonna choke point at the causeway until they fix the causeway. So potentially, and they definitely, if the causeway can't handle the existing trains today, it definitely can't handle the 120-foot new trains tomorrow. So there is probably a multi-million-dollar project coming to fix the causeway, but the challenge is it's going to get, you essentially have to shut down you have to shut the causeway for a year to replace it.
I think the idea was they were going to try and make that coincide with when Leachmere is out to have GLX tied in.
Yeah, that makes sense, and you have to, but the expenditure I think might be separate.
Right.
It's not baked into GLX,
Right.
It's a separate.
It's a separate project, but they're going to try and get it spooled up quickly, as I understand it, so that it happens coincidental with GLX. And basically, I guess they'll be taking 2 stations off instead of 1. I don't know if there's a way to turn trains at Science Park, but
But it's not in the tip, is it?
not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so it's not programmed then. Okay.
Unless they're using no federal funds, then.
All right.
Can I ask a question? What's happening to Leachmere? This isn't something I know anything about.
It's being reconfigured for the Green Line expansion.
Okay.
It's going to turn, right now it's just a loop and there's a little
Right.
yard and it's going to turn into a through station.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Really
actually
across the street.
Yeah, it's being moved across the street, and it's gonna kind of be where that parking lot is. There's
Yeah.
a parking lot there now,
Yeah.
and then it'll run behind the glass factory condos and continue on.
Okay, yeah, I know that area. I rode that, I used Leachmere for 8 years, and now when I go there, it's a completely different.
I know.
It's really changed.
So the idea is that that's not because that's being fixed, straightened, essentially because the curve's going away and it's being extended.
Right.
You don't have to worry about the long trains making that curve there. That's
Exactly.
Take one of the problem children off the.
Right.
So I guess long story short on that causeway thing, I think it's something that'd be interesting to get an update on that from somebody, because it seems crazy. You have to do it when you do Leachmere. It'd be crazy to shut Leachmere for a year, replace Leachmere, and then somehow you get delayed on the causeway because you don't have funding, and you have to shut it for a second year to do. You essentially.
Yeah.
You have this brand new Green Line extension, and you have to check the brand new Green Line extension to fix the causeway for a year. It would be crazy. So I'm sure it's high on their priority list, but if it's not on, to your point, on some of the planning documents, interesting questions to ask.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly isn't going to happen. It's not going to happen in fiscal year 19.
Right. I think just look at Connecticut to see a similar situation. The viaduct through Hartford Union Station can only take 1 train at a time, and they just spent $1 billion double tracking the line, and they're launching new commuter rail service. But the station in Hartford can still only handle 1 train at a time, where the viaduct will, in theory, fall down. And so they have a major bottleneck they've built in there until they're wholly off on rebuilding everything, because I-84 is going to be put underground through that area, and that's going to pay for everything, but that's still 5 or 10 years in the future, and everything is like totally on hold until then.
I didn't know Hartford was getting its own big dig.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the issues you're up against, though, is that, this region could suck every transportation dollar that the state has available to it, and so I mean, when you look at the tip, it's just a statewide thing, and so you gotta get some monies out in the direction, because I mean, when it comes to getting support, for projects here, if the western part of the state isn't getting money, they're not going to support us when.
They're getting road money though.
Yeah,
that
that's
we're
not
not
true.
getting.
Huh?
They're getting road money that we're not getting.
Well, yeah, it is roads. Yeah, no,
So
that's.
they're getting it, they're just not getting transit money the way we are.
Oh, it's
They're
all-
not getting road money the way they are.
The tip is all just one big pot, it's roads and transit,
Right,
it's
but don't
everything.
you think that per capita, they're getting more road money than we are? So they probably rely on cars much more than we do.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that when it comes to trying to get support money here for projects, I mean, if you don't help them out, not gonna happen.
I hate to say this, but it's quarter of.
I'm good, that's all,
We would be 20 minutes behind our schedule, but I'm going to defer my own topic because that's not anything important. But what is important is we do at least the minutes and the nominations of new co-chairs so that next month we can vote on new co-chairs. We don't have to vote tonight, but because we'll go in order so I don't forget anything. Did anyone not have a chance to look at the minutes who really wanted to? Any objections to me taking a vote on approval of the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve minutes, do I have a second? Minutes are approved, thank you very much.
I'll abstain, I wasn't here.
Now on to nomination of co-chairs. For people who might have, people who did join the ROC in January, it's a 6-month term for each of the 2 co-chairs, myself and Arkady, with a 2-term, meaning 1-year limit. So I can't be the co-chair after July 1st, which means that we need to have nominations for at least 2 new co-chairs, because Arkady also has been since July of 2017. Go ahead, Lynn.
I was gonna nominate.
Oh, please, yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna nominate one person I've talked to and one person I haven't talked to. So the person I've talked to is Chris. And for a total infusion of new blood, the person I haven't talked to is Amy.
Oh my goodness, okay.
And you don't have to decide, you don't have to accept or whatever, you just have to let us know before the next meeting, even like at 5 o'clock the next meeting, just let us know if you want to be considered or not. Then
Sure, I
we'll
want to
vote
be considered.
during the next
Why
meeting.
not? Why not?
Okay, but you can change your mind if you want.
Okay, why not?
And you can also talk to me and Arkady and anybody else about what it really means, because.
I will be talking to you about what it really means.
And we can, adjust the executive committee calls, we do whatever fits everyone's
Yeah.
schedules.
Yeah, and because this is on YouTube for posterity, I'm not gonna make any cracks about like all the dirty duties of the co-chair.
Yeah, I'll have to find out I'll find out later. I don't own a computer, so I don't know how that's going to fit.
Well, I am a computer, so I'll pick up the slack for you.
Okay, excellent.
All I can say is I recommend being co-chair.
Then I'm gonna do it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Len.
I actually am rusty on the subcommittees.
I want to talk to you about this again.
Do we do the co-chairs of the subcommittees in the subcommittee?
Yeah, we do them in the subcommittee.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Len, I appreciate it.
Honestly, I'm not used to that. All right, well then we're on to, I've got 6:48. I'm gonna jump ahead. There is only one thing that I would, if we have 2 or 3 minutes, there's one thing I do want to mention about, GLX and the Grand Junction, that stuff. But I want to first hear any reports on external meetings, new business, old business, anything that anyone wants to bring up.
Sure, and so for external meetings, the RTAC is very interesting. The survey has been completed, and it's available. I'll send you the link. I've been meaning to do that. I mean, I've been negligent on doing that because it seems like it's really nice. All of the survey data, is downloadable. It's very interactive. So when I send you the link, I think you're really going to love it. And so that was a big highlight for me, RTAC. And I mentioned a while ago that we are considered a stakeholder in MassDOT's development of a disparate impact, disproportionate burden, DIDB policy. So the first meeting was last night, and it was mostly introductory, laying out what DBDI is, and I'm excited about how it's going. It's going to be the chance for MassDOT, to develop its own policies for making sure that there's equity, in transit. And once again, this will be for statewide. So it's going to take into account not only transit but also highways and all. And we will get to make the policy as simple or as complex as we want. And so Tegan takes, I think that's her last name, she's the the chair of the Regional Transportation Advisory Committee. She's on it, and a couple other people I recognize. Wig was actually there. Can only imagine what he talked about. So it seems like it'll be a worthwhile exercise. And it's good to have a seat at the table. So that was that.
That's different from the work that the MPO is doing around DIDB.
That is the MPO.
Oh, that is it.
Yeah. I said mascot. I should have said MPO. I'm sorry. I misspoke. It's MPO. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any new business, old business?
I'm not sure if this is an external meetings thing, but there are 3 more SIP meetings. There's one tomorrow. I think I can re-email The Rock the flyer I sent out a little bit ago, but the first one is going to be, of the next 3 is going to be in Quincy tomorrow from 6 to 8. Tomorrow's going to be Quincy. Then on the 30th is New Bedford, at Bedford Voltec, and then the 31st is Framingham at a fire station. Again, I can send the executive board, I had that email block already, the flyer, if you guys want to circulate that as well. It's just, it's the next 5-year planning for capital investments for MBTA and NASDAQ in general.
Wow.
Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that. I don't want to put you on the spot, but since Sandy's here for the first time, would you be up for just, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes of telling us what you're doing, sort of as like an introduction, because we haven't had the pleasure of your group?
Yeah. So my name is Sandy Johnston. I've met many of you at one point or another. I work for CDPS, or the Boston Region MPO. They have traditionally, I guess, staffed the Rock with 1 or 2 people. Right, traditionally those people who come from the transit group, they're a little bit understaffed right now. I work in what we call our certification activities group, which is the crew that produces the kind of core documents that the MPO is required to produce for federal certification. Since the MPOs are federally chartered, for example, my group is handling the DIDB policy, though I'm not directly involved in that. My day job is as the manager for what's called the Unified Planning Work Program, which is a document the MPO puts out yearly that lays out the program budget, how much is being spent on which item in the budget, and what studies we're doing in a given year. And that document, actually, I will put my pitch out right now, is out for public comment at the moment. It was approved for public comment by the MPO on May 3rd, and public comment will be wrapping up on June 14th, I want to say.
I thought it was the first, but we'll be coming.
June 11th, not. And then we'll post the revised document on June 14th. And we have an open house coming up on May 31st, which is a Thursday, 11 to 7 at our offices right across the hall, just on this floor, other side of this floor in this building. Anytime during the day you can come in and talk to me, you can talk to my coworkers about what's going on. We have, I think, an exciting slate of studies that some of the folks in this room would be interested in coming up for this year, assuming it does get finally approved by the MPO, including looking at how people arrive in business districts and especially look at transit and how they behave once they get there, with an eye toward thinking about more productive curb uses, such as bus or bike lanes, and actually having data-informed discussions about that, rather than discussions that are just kind of dominated by the fear of merchants that all of their customers drive. And we're looking at some new metrics for how to measure who uses roadways. We're doing some interesting data visualizations, all that kind of thing. So I invite you to come to comment. You can talk to me if you're interested in that kind of thing. Everything's online as well, and we welcome comments in any format. Please comment. We've only gotten 1 comment, and that was from the advisory council thus far, so I'm kind of bored.
We'll be commenting. Don't worry. We just...
Thursday the 31st, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m.
11 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Right over there.
Right over there.
Fantastic.
Come in anytime. Yeah, and I have been here several times informally for meetings. I enjoy it. I learn a lot from you guys. I personally am quite a bit of a transit geek. Never imagine, right? You can find me on Twitter. My master's thesis was on modernizing commuter rail, not specifically focused on the MBTA, but obviously that's a topic that is around here considerably. So, yeah, I'm happy to be here. And I don't know if I'm going to be the permanent staffer. I might volunteer myself for it, but I imagine you'll be seeing me.
Great.
Cool, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
We've got 6:55. I know Barry wanted to make one comment. I'm going to squeeze in just one little quick mention, which was going to be broadened out to that 15-minute thing about GLX, whatever. The Green Line extension is having an impact on commuter rail tracks around the Boston Engine Terminal, on the junction between, not junction, the border between Cambridge and Boston and Somerville, that general area. Because of that, there's been, for example, Fitchburg line trains ending at Porter Square, and people have been put on to the red line to get the rest of the way to town. I believe there's been similar things coming in from Haverhill, stopping at Malden, putting you on the orange line. I just wanted to relay to you that I've been following the customer service aspect of it and the signage and the notices. I think they're doing a great job. I wanted to report, I couldn't make it to the operations committee to talk with Linda, but I thought the commuter rail people and the MBTA people are doing a really great job. And I wanted to mention it tonight, just in brief, because I wanted to have you guys keep an eye on that with me. I'm only at a very small number of commuter rail and, like Porter and such. So if you would keep an eye on that for the next, I think the heavy work for the commuter rail changes in order to accommodate the Green Line extension is pretty much over the next 6 months. So help us all watch out for that. Again, the customer service aspect of those diversions and everything. Thanks for letting me say that. And Barry, I hope you'll ask the question that you asked me and you whispered in my ear, because that's a really interesting question, I thought. And whatever else you want to say.
I wrote it down so it's a little faster. I'm Barry Steinberg, Association for Public Transportation. At Haymarket, for the short term, perhaps there could be off-bus fare collection.
Actually, I wanted to ask Melissa that.
Before the new fare system was introduced. This might possibly be an issue with Dudley Station as well. Now, on the other hand, there are some people who won't use the fare vending machines regardless. They have to almost be forced into this. That's item one. Item two, at Ashmont Station, the inbound streetcar opens both doors, and people board, and many people board at the rear door without paying a fare. And this is not necessarily limited to the rush hour, because I've seen this at 10:30 a.m. On a weekday. Sometimes the operator says the fare box, quote, isn't working, but it says out of service. You can pass those items around. Unrelated, the railroad enthusiast is going to be having an excursion on the Conway Scenic Railroad on Sunday, the 10th of June. See me for details.
Thank you very much.
Where is it going to leave from, Barry?
It's leaving from North Conway.
Oh, so you have
You gotta get to New Hampshire.
You have to make it
all the way up there.
You have to make it to North Conway.
Did you want to reflect on the Ashmont boarding, or we maybe take it up in subcommittee?
We can take it up. I think the trolley is working great.
Okay.
So, a quick note, Linda has invited us, to go on a field trip to the information center. I guess it's the public information center, the PIC or something. So she was very enthusiastic about. I guess you and Bonnie went to it, so
yeah,
she's invited.
Creek, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
So anytime we want to do a field trip there, she's invited us to do this.
I'll mail the group about that.
Yeah.
Anything else? But we're coming up on 7. We don't have to stop right at 7, but.
No, I just wanted to comment about the queue lane. Just remember that the Haymarket busway is actually going to get renovated because they're taking down the parking garage above it. So there is a plan, and this is maybe something we can take on as a group, is to make sure they do prepayment at that when they design it. I think it's still in design. I'll check.
I heard somewhere they're going down to one lane for the bus lane.
Yeah, I want to make sure. I feel like that the bus
Chelsea
riders are really going to get the shaft.
The design I saw was not real much. It's like a shrinkage of what.
It's a shrinkage, so it's maybe something to
It
talk
sounds
about.
all bad, so if there's gates before that might be a good thing to
Yeah.
speed it up, but.
Thank you, everybody.
We see how the meetings run. And then we have a